Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Sometimes I get caught up in my training. The martial arts require a certain amount of dedication. Dedication can only take you so far. Hello, America. Do not be afraid. It is I, the Eternal One. I have many names. They call me Stan Pyre, Jackie Daytona. I am the Alpha and Omega vampire. I was here at the beginning and I shall be here at the end. You also know me as Daniel Week, League Commissioner of Selena Gomez Fan Club, the official Vampire Fantasy Football League of the Vampire Journals podcast. Speaking of Daniel Week, it is week 11 in fantasy football. Let's get right down to it. We're here to talk about a couple of leagues, kicking off with none other than Selena Gomez Fan Club. As mentioned, 10 weeks in the books. We're starting to see that playoff picture clean up just a little bit. We got two teams at the top at 7-3, El Chupa Cupra and Gavine Blade. Surprise turnaround for Andy Martin after a putrid season last year. One game behind, we got Hud the Stud and Jackie Daytona going head to head. Both 6-4, but won't be for long, as one of those teams is going to move into sole possession of third place after this week. Potentially a two-way tie, depending on how Jesse and Andy shake out. Now that means we've got the four teams in the playoffs at the moment. We got three teams clawing with their fingernails for that inch because they are hanging on by a thread. Mr. Solo Dolo, Chase Vickery, the Bonafex Trees, Quinn Carson, and Dark Eternal Knight, former two-time vampire Stephen Fox. All three are at 4-6. They've got a chance to make the playoffs, but they got to get their stuff in gear right now. So there's only 4 weeks left until we solidify those 4 playoff spots. Coming off of a victory last week, sitting in the cellar, but he's starting to turn things around the back half of the season. That's this year's Vampire, 2-8, Vlad Jackson, Curtis Taylor. And this guy has been in close battles all season long, and after 2 victories in 3 weeks, he now has Lamar Jackson and Bijan Robinson at his disposal, leaving Quinn with 1 quarterback, leaving Daniel's running back depth in dire need with Zach Moss on season-ending IR. And it's not the only need that Jackie Daytona has, though, but we've got a really competitive year this year in the Selena Gomez Fan Club. Jesse continuing that trend of top-tier regular season performances, and this is without Christian McCaffrey fully rounded into form. So I think anybody with a sane brain in the membrane is going to say that Jesse's probably the team to beat right now. It's obvious with him being in first place. He is leading the league in scoring. But again, if this guy's able to continue producing, he's got one more matchup with the Vampire. If he goes through that unscathed and gets the C-Mac back that we know can attack, that I think this guy's going to get his first championship in year 3. As mentioned before, couldn't be more proud of Andy Martin. 3rd year in the league, down year last year, but he's showing us across all 3 leagues, realistically, that this guy's got what it takes. Jalen Hurts, after a slow start, is really starting to produce, specifically in the rushing end, getting a lot of rushing touchdowns, which are helping to elevate that score up to the top. Nico Collins finally making a return after a long stint on the IR. Remember, this guy was the wide receiver 1 when he went down with injury after, boy, that's a misclick. After Nico Collins went down with an injury in week 5. But this guy was on a tear. I think he's really going to reinvigorate life into that Houston Texans offense. He's got Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. Andrews, another guy, slow starter, who's really turned it on as of late. Zay Flowers has elevated his game all season long. I think he's outperformed even the most optimistic of projections. And Andy's wealth is such that he's got Amon-Ra St. Brown currently in the flex. And guys, this is the number 7 fantasy wide receiver in PPR scoring. He's still got a break in case of emergency. Patrick Mahomes on the bench. Hasn't had to pull him out this year, but that's somebody who's sticking around. Rashad White, every time, speaking of vampires, every time you think this guy's dead, he goes out there and gets 6 catches for 48 yards and sneaks into double-digit fantasy scoring. Calvin Ridley's been there when he needs him. The biggest question for Andy is the likes of Chris Godwin on IR going to affect his depth, especially considering he has one more matchup with the Vampire. Can he afford to lose another one of those super talented wide receivers we talked about? Zehud, the stud, 6-4. This guy, I thought he was going to be without a quarterback this week. Kyler Murray on bye. But the Indianapolis Colts surprised everybody by announcing that Anthony Richardson was going to return to a starting role this week. Really bails out HUD, and he needs him in a big way after Terry McLaurin went out and got 2 fantasy points in PPR scoring for the Vampire League on that Thursday night affair against Philadelphia. So at this moment, that's hurting Zehud's projections and production. And he's got to hope that he gets something more out of Anthony Richardson than we saw in the first half of the season before he was replaced by Joe Flacco. Quinn going up against Steven, 2 4-6 teams. They both need a win in the worst way. Steven got an 11.5 point performance out of A.J. Brown on Thursday night in that aforementioned matchup against the Commanders. And he's currently in a tight projection, projected to lose 114.2 to 110.4. Quinn's got the edge from the math nerds. We'll see if that plays out over this weekend. Both of those teams not forecasted to put up a ton of points. I think that means it's going to be an exciting matchup along the way. Last matchup we've got guy by the name of Mr. Solo Dolo. Chase been putting up big numbers all season long, has not had luck in his favor as he has stumbled to a 4-6 performance. He's going up against that guy tied for first place, Andy Martin, who sits at 7-3. Currently, after Thursday night, Chase got enough out of Jalen Daniels. A subpar performance for him, 13.4 points, but Saquon more than made up with it with a multi-touchdown effort that got him 33.8 points. That worked in his favor against Andy, who also had 2 players going, Jalen Hurts and Eagles kicker Jake Elliott, who got 6 points. So currently, we got Chase projected, according to ESPN, to win. That would move him to 5-6, 1 spot closer to playoffs. Looking like, barring a disaster, Andy and Jesse have it locked up. HUD and D-Wees currently holding the last 2 spots. We'll see if one of those 3 teams at 4-6 is able to boost one of them out and make their way into the playoffs. Remember, guys, we got 4 weeks left. You got 0 waiver acquisitions left. Get your trades in now. You got to make a move while you can, because this is going to be one for the ages. And speaking of ages, we know the Ray Lewis League has been around forever. I think we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4 presidential elections, 3 presidents. We've seen 2-time champions like Johnsonville Chump. I just call him Chump for short. It's okay. We'll get to that. But another awesome year in the Ray Lewis League, and it starts at the top. Scotty Too Naughty Ballin'. Much ado about something, his lack of participation in the chat, in the text threads. We didn't see him at episode 100 over at the Vampire Journals podcast. You guys can follow us there on Spotify for all your audio podcast needs. We just crossed the century mark. We just put out our most progressive, our loftiest episode yet, the Halloween episode that was multiple years in the making, clocked in just under 1 hour. It's a hell of a mystery, hell of a good time. Check it out and follow us if you like what you hear over there. But again, we got Scotty Too Naughty at the top, 9-1. He's 3 games above 3 teams that sit in second place, 3 teams at 6-4. A couple of River Valley boys. Chase Vickery might not be super surprised to hear his name, but the next one you probably are. Team Fernant, the Skin Cannon, Sam Kincannon. He's setting lineups, he's wiping butts, he's got babies and kids to take care of, and he's taking care of business over in the Sleeper app. Sitting at 6-4, tied with Kyle Russell, who said on draft night he's ready to make a comeback and make his presence known in this league, and he's done so thus far. Also sitting at 6-4, a collection of teams at 5-5 as well. That would round out our playoff picture with Scotty, Chase, Sam, Kyle, then 3 teams vying for 2 spots currently at 5-5. The Anal Fisters, last year's champion, doing it without Christian McCaffrey. Now that he is coming back, is this going to give Derek the push he needs to get back into that championship picture? And then two teams we talked about a lot in the last segment. They went head-to-head last week in this league, this week in the previous league. Talking about Hud the Stud 06 and Big Red Fucking Bells. Both those teams sit at 5-5 due to tiebreaker. Hud's on the outside looking in, and Team D Week 999 holding on for his playoff life with the precious few weeks left. Another recurring theme, Steven, Quinn, both sitting at 4-6, along with Chump Dynasty two-time champion Johnsonville champ Tristan Weaver. But Steven and Quinn, they're probably getting tired of me saying this. You guys are 4-6 on the outside looking in, and you got to take care of business right now. Andy Martin, 3-7, hasn't been able to overcome the injuries like he did in the Vampire League, but we know he's a perennial contender. And then best friend of the podcast, former champion Jay Moneybags, looking to return to former glory. Can he do it this week? We're going to see. If we take a look at the pick'ems that Quinn's been driving this year, not a lot of teams are taking Jay Money this week as he takes on Quinn. So far in terms of pick'em participation, everybody has Quinn to take out everybody's best friend Jay Moneybags. The line is split 2-2, 2 people picking Steven, 2 people picking Derek. We got 3 picking Z-Hud in his matchup against Andy. All 4 people so far taking Tristan to lose against Chase, so they're picking 4 picks for Chase to win, 4 picks for Daniel to beat Kyle, and then a little surprise here, 4 teams picking Scotty, 2 Naughty Ballin' to take out Team Fernit. Sam were able to eke out a victory against our league leader so far this year. Might make a little bit of movement in terms of shaking up the top of the standings there. But the Ray Lewis League, again, as always, is competitive. We're getting a lot of action in the chat. We love your participation in the pick'ems. And if you're a first-time watcher at home, you have no context, you don't listen to the podcast, feel free to email us at vampirejournalspodcast@gmail.com and give us your pick'ems, or you can do it right down below in the comments in the YouTube channel. The comments section is going to be right in between the video. You got comments, and then right in between is that like and subscribe button. So as you're shifting your mouse cursor down there, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe while you're down there. So for the uninitiated, the matchups we need you to pick this week: Quinn versus Jay Moneybags, Steven versus Derek, Z-Hud versus Andy, Chase versus Tristan, Kyle versus D-Week, and Scotty versus Sam. We'd love to get some strangers in this thing. It'd make it super exciting. I know that YouTube's got the algorithms. This is going to show up on a lot of people's homepages, and I appreciate you sticking through to the end, because viewer retention rate is one of the primary metrics that gets your YouTube channel elevated to the top. And speaking of the top, the last thing we're going to go to the bottom, because the last thing we're going to talk about in this week's video-sode, is Marie Antoinette's Guillotine Gala. We are down to the Elite 8 in our first inaugural Guillotine League, which has seen people brought together from the Vampire League, from the Ray Lewis League, and then a couple of stragglers, a couple of people in California, a couple of people in Texas, first-time callers, first-time listeners. It's been a battle, a bloodbath for the uninitiated Guillotine Leagues. The lowest scoring team each week kicked out of the league. Your team, all your players, they go to the free agency pool. You get $1,000 throughout the season to bid on free agency picks. Chase, the resident accountant of the Vampire Journals podcast conglomerate, has been really interested in taking numbers and analysis in terms of how bidding has fluctuated throughout the season. We saw a lot of big bids early in the year. We didn't know how to spend the pool. We saw a downward decline, and top-tier players going for about half of what they were earlier in the season. As we round back into the final stretch, though, some of those teams that pinched the pennies throughout the year are able to spin big now. Sifa Tui, Stephen Fox, these guys are able to go out there and get guys like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. And yeah, it's real exciting as we're getting to the Elite 8, and unfortunately that Thursday night affair between Washington and Philly really sabotaged me. We talked about Terry McLaurin, lackluster performance, 2 points A.J. Brown, for him, substandard performance, 11 points. Unfortunately, both of those players are located on my roster in my starting lineup. Judge Isaac Parker, even though he's 6-2, 6-game win streak, dropped his projection down from 111 points to 94.59, which really puts you in the danger zone. If you take a look at the rest of the projections from the remaining 7 teams, you got some low scores, 107, 109, 107, but we got some big scores, 135, 122, 125, and 113. So what that says is my guys have to show up in a big way on Sunday, and I got to get some lackluster performances for guys like Kurt Taylor, Stephen Fox, and Giovanni Battista Bugatti, Quinn Carson's team. I need those teams to falter if I have any chance of surviving in this Guillotine League. Now, folks at home, this is the fastest 5 minutes. This is the 2-minute warning, and this is one of our ways of taking new shots at getting basically all of our media empire out there. So again, follow us at the Vampire Journals podcast, the Blade of Fantasy Football on Spotify. You can email us at vampirejournalspodcast at gmail.com. You can obviously follow us here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, like, and as always, don't forget to protect your neck.